Lieutenant Jack Miller stood at the viewing window of Earth's lunar base, watching the alien ship approach. His palms were sweaty inside his formal uniform. After 20 years as a Marine and 3 as a diplomat, Jack rarely felt nervous. But today was different. Today humanity would officially meet aliens for the first time. "Lieutenant Miller, they're ready for docking," said a voice behind him. Jack turned to see his assistant, Diane, holding a tablet with the final protocol checklist. "Thanks, Diane." "How's the welcome committee?" Jack asked. "Everyone's in position, sir. The President is online from Earth and the UN Secretary General is waiting in the conference room." Jack nodded and straightened his tie. "Then let's make history." The ship that docked at Lunar Base Alpha was smaller than Jack expected. It gleamed, with a metallic blue surface that seemed to shift and change as it moved. When the airlock opened, Jack took a deep breath and stepped forward. The aliens that emerged were not what anyone had predicted. Ambassador Zixtal of the Thraxi species stood about 5 feet tall, with light purple skin that looked almost translucent. 4 arms extended from a slender torso, and large, multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly in the artificial light of the docking bay. "Welcome to Earth's Lunar Base Alpha," Jack said, careful not to make any sudden movements. "I'm Lieutenant Jack Miller, representing the United Nations of Earth." The alien delegation hesitated at the airlock. Ambassador Zixtal made a series of musical clicking sounds which a small device at his neck translated. "We appreciate your welcome, Lieutenant Miller. We are—" The ambassador paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Pleased that you agreed to this meeting location." Jack noticed the alien stayed unusually far back. Protocol had suggested a distance of 3 feet for diplomatic greetings, but the Thraxi maintained at least 10 feet of separation. "Please, follow me to our conference facilities," Jack said with a gesture toward the corridor. As they walked, Jack noticed more odd behavior. The aliens flinched when a crew member dropped a tablet nearby. They kept looking at the human's hands and feet, with what seemed like alarm. And when they passed a maintenance worker using a cutting torch, the entire delegation pressed against the opposite wall. In the conference room, the aliens insisted on having their own separate air supply, explaining it was standard protocol for new contact species. Jack didn't argue, though Earth scientists had confirmed the atmospheres were compatible. 20 minutes into the diplomatic meeting, the real strangeness began. "We must express our admiration," Ambassador Zixtal said through the translator. "The Confederation has observed your planet for many years, but we still find it remarkable that intelligent life could evolve in such challenging conditions." The UN Secretary General smiled. "Earth has its challenges, but we find it quite hospitable." The aliens exchanged glances that even Jack, with no experience in alien expressions, could tell indicated shock. "Hospitable?" Another alien, introduced as Science Officer Krell, repeated. "Your gravity alone would crush most sentient species. Your oxygen levels are corrosively high. The radiation from your sun would cause cellular damage to most Confederation species within minutes of exposure." Jack blinked. "These conditions are normal for us." "Precisely what makes your species so remarkable," Ambassador Zixtal said. "This is why we insisted on meeting here, on your moon, rather than on Earth itself. Even with protective measures, prolonged exposure to Earth conditions would be hazardous for us." The conversation was interrupted when a small tremor shook the base. It was a minor moonquake, barely noticeable to the humans. But the alien delegation immediately activated personal force fields and began emergency protocols. "It's all right," Jack said quickly. "Just a small moonquake. They happen regularly. There's no danger." The aliens slowly deactivated their shields, but Jack could see they remained tense. "You felt that and determined it was safe." "Without instruments?" Science Officer Krell asked. "Yes, it was very minor," Jack explained. Later, as they took a break for refreshments, Jack found himself speaking privately with Ambassador Zixtal. "I sense there's something you're not telling us about how you view Earth," Jack said. The ambassador's large eyes blinked rapidly. "We did not wish to begin our relationship with what might be perceived as an insult, but since you asked directly, your planet is classified in our records as a Class 13 Deathworld." "A what?" Jack asked. In the Galactic Confederation's planetary classification system, worlds are rated from Class 1 to Class 13 based on environmental hazards. Class 1 worlds are paradise planets. Perfect gravity, ideal temperature ranges, minimal geological activity, low radiation. Most Confederation species evolved on Class 2 or 3 worlds. And Earth is a Class 13? Jack asked. The highest rating in our system, the ambassador confirmed. In fact, your planet is the only inhabited world we've encountered above Class 7. We did not believe intelligent life could evolve under such conditions. Jack struggled to process this information. What makes Earth so dangerous by your standards? Everything, the ambassador said simply. Your gravity is 2.3 times what most Confederation species consider comfortable. Your oxygen levels would cause oxidative damage to most species' tissues within days. Your solar radiation levels are extreme. Your planet experiences constant geological instability. Your temperature variations are extreme. Your world is covered in water, a substance that can dissolve or drown most species. And your bacterial and viral diversity would overwhelm most immune systems instantly. But those are just normal conditions to us, Jack said. Exactly. And that is what terrifies many in the Confederation. Your species evolved under pressures that would kill most sentient beings. It has made you, the ambassador paused, durable in ways we find difficult to comprehend. As Jack escorted the delegation back to their ship at the end of the meeting, he noticed they watched the human crew with new eyes, a mixture of fear and fascination. We will continue our diplomatic conversations, Ambassador Zixtal said, as they prepared to depart. But I must warn you, many species will be frightened by humanity's capabilities. The fact that you can survive, even thrive, in conditions that would kill most sentient beings will make some view you as potential threats. Jack frowned. We have no hostile intentions. Intention is not the issue, the ambassador replied. Capability is what will concern them. A species that considers a Class 13 Deathworld home is unprecedented in our records. As the alien ship departed, Jack returned to his office and began drafting his report for Earth's leaders. The humans had expected many possible reactions from first contact. Fear based on their biology wasn't one of them. They hadn't even shown the aliens what humans could really do yet. Jack looked out the window at Earth in the distance, seeing it with new eyes. The beautiful blue planet that humanity called home was, to the rest of the galaxy, the most terrifying world they had ever encountered. And its inhabitants, simply by surviving there, had become the most durable species in known space. First contact had gone well, but Jack realized they'd only scratched the surface of what it would mean for humanity to join a galactic community that viewed them as creatures evolved from a nightmare world. Dr. Susan Campbell had never imagined she would be packing for a trip to an alien space station. As NASA's top expert on human physiology, she had been selected to help create a comprehensive profile on human capabilities for the Galactic Confederation. 6 weeks after first contact, humanity was still adjusting to the idea that they were considered terrifying space monsters by most alien species. Susan zipped her duffel bag and looked around her apartment one last time. The government handlers had told her she might be gone for up to 3 months. She picked up the photo of her family and tucked it into her bag. Time to show the aliens what humans are really made of, she whispered to herself. The shuttle ride to the orbital transfer station was uneventful, but Susan's heart raced as the human transport docked with the much larger alien vessel. The airlock cycled, and Susan stepped through into her first alien environment. Her escort was waiting for her. Rollick stood nearly 7 feet tall, with greenish-brown scales and a heavy jaw that reminded Susan of an alligator. According to her briefing, he was from a species called the Varex, one of the few Confederation races sturdy enough to handle extended exposure to humans. Dr. Campbell, Rollick said, his voice surprisingly soft for his size. Welcome aboard the Confederation vessel Harmony. I will be your security liaison during your stay. Susan noticed that despite his impressive size, Rollick kept a careful distance from her. Thank you, Rollick. I'm looking forward to helping the Confederation understand humans better. Yes, Ralik said, shifting his weight nervously. Please follow me. The station has prepared special quarters for you with Earth-standard conditions. As they walked through the curved corridors of the station, Susan noticed other aliens making way for them, pressing against walls or ducking into side passages. Some stared openly at her with what could only be described as fascination mixed with fear. They're acting like I'm dangerous, Susan said quietly. Ralik made a clicking sound that Susan's translator didn't catch. You must understand, Dr. Campbell, most species in the Confederation evolved on worlds with much gentler conditions. Your physiology reflects the harsh realities of your homeworld. But I'm just a scientist, Susan protested. I'm 5'4", and I've never hurt anyone. It is not about intention, Ralik explained as they entered a lift. It is about capability. For example, the gravity on this station is set to Confederation standard, which is approximately 0.7 of your Earth gravity. Most species find this comfortable, but for you it feels light. Susan nodded. I did notice I feel a bit bouncy. Yet you adapt instantly, Ralik said. Most species would require days of acclimatization to adapt to a 30% change in gravitational force. Your ability to function normally in changing conditions is unsettling to many. The next day, Susan began her work at the station's medical facility. The Confederation scientists had prepared a series of tests to document human capabilities, but they seemed shocked by even the most basic human functions. You consume this? Asked Dr. Neary, a small blue alien with 6 delicate fingers on each hand pointing at Susan's coffee. Yes, it's a popular drink on Earth, Susan explained. The caffeine helps us stay alert. Dr. Neary made notes on a tablet. A substance that would cause cardiac arrest in 12 Confederation species is consumed for mild stimulation by humans. Over the days that followed, Susan learned just how Earth compared to other worlds. The oxygen levels that humans needed would be toxic to many species. The pressure changes humans could endure by simply diving into water or climbing a mountain would rupture the internal organs of most Confederation races. Even the temperature range humans found comfortable represented extinction-level climate shifts on other worlds. During a physical endurance test, Susan ran on a treadmill while the scientists monitored her vitals. After 20 minutes, Dr. Neary called for a stop. Is something wrong? Susan asked, barely winded. You have been running continuously for 20 minutes without significant strain, Dr. Neary said. Most species cannot sustain such cardiovascular output for more than 3 to 5 minutes. Susan laughed. I was just warming up. On Earth, some humans run for hours, even days. The scientists exchanged alarmed glances. Later that week, Susan was eating lunch with Ralik when an alarm blared through the station. A voice over the intercom called for immediate evacuation of Section 7. What's happening? Susan asked as crew members rushed past them. Environmental system malfunction, Ralik said, rising quickly. We must evacuate. They joined the flow of aliens heading toward safety when Susan heard a cry from a side corridor. She turned to see a small alien child separated from its group, looking disoriented. Wait, Susan called to Ralik, already moving toward the child. Dr. Campbell, we must leave. The environment in that section is becoming unstable, Ralik warned. But Susan had already reached the child, who shrank back in fear before allowing Susan to pick it up. As they returned to the main corridor, smoke began filling the area. Fire in the environmental systems, Ralik said, his scales darkening with stress. The temperature is rising rapidly. Susan could feel the heat increasing, but it was still well within what she could handle. The child in her arms, however, was showing signs of distress. Take the child, Susan said, handing the small alien to Ralik. I saw a control panel back there. I might be able to close the fire suppression doors. It is too dangerous, Ralik protested. The temperature is approaching levels lethal to most species. But not to me, Susan said firmly. Get the child to safety. Before Ralik could argue further, Susan turned and ran back toward the smoke. She found the control panel and quickly figured out the alien interface. With a few taps, she engaged the emergency containment protocol. Fire suppression doors slammed shut, isolating the burning section. By the time Susan rejoined the others in the safe zone, emergency teams were already responding. She noticed a crowd of aliens staring at her in what seemed like shock. The human entered the danger zone voluntarily, one whispered loud enough for her translator to catch. She exposed herself to temperatures that would cause severe damage to most species, another added. Rallick approached her, still holding the alien child. Dr. Campbell, that was remarkable. Few species would willingly enter a hazardous environment to help others. It wasn't that hot, Susan shrugged. Any human would have done the same. The station's director, a tall, willowy alien named Vexlor, requested to meet with Susan later that day. Dr. Campbell, your actions during today's emergency have caused quite a stir among the station personnel, Vexlor said. I was just trying to help, Susan replied. That is precisely what has caused such interest, Vexlor explained. For most of the galaxy, a species with your physical capabilities would naturally be aggressive predators. Yet humans consistently show protective instincts toward others, even at personal risk. Susan considered this. On Earth, our physical adaptations helped us survive. But our cooperation and willingness to protect each other is what made us thrive. Vexlor made a gesture Susan couldn't interpret. Perhaps this is why your species evolved on a Deathworld yet developed spaceflight, instead of extinction. You are dangerous, yes, but your danger can serve as protection for others. As Susan returned to her quarters that night, she realized something had changed. The aliens she passed no longer pressed themselves against walls in fear. Instead, they gave her respectful distance and what might have been nods of acknowledgement. Humans weren't just terrifying monsters from a deadly planet anymore. They were beginning to be seen as potential protectors in a dangerous galaxy. Captain Alan Price stood on the bridge of the USS Endeavour, Earth's first starship built with Confederation technology. 6 months after first contact, humanity had moved quickly to establish its place in the galactic community. The Endeavour, while small by Confederation standards, represented a major achievement in human-alien cooperation. Status report, Lieutenant, Alan said to his communications officer. Confederation vessels are in position, sir, replied Lieutenant Lisa Cho. They're waiting for our signal to begin the joint exercise. Alan nodded and looked out at the 5 alien ships positioned around them. This would be the first military exercise between humans and the Galactic Confederation. He knew that many in the Confederation Council had opposed this idea, considering humans too unpredictable and potentially dangerous to include in military operations. Open a channel to Commander Zeltor, Alan ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing the blue-skinned commander of the Confederation forces. Commander Zeltor's large eyes blinked rapidly, and what Alan had learned was a sign of nervous tension. Commander Zeltor, the Endeavour is ready to begin the exercise, Alan said. Acknowledged, Captain Price, the alien commander replied. Remember, this is a simple search and rescue scenario. No weapons will be fired. The objective is to recover the training drones from the asteroid field while coordinating between our vessels. Understood, Alan said. My crew is looking forward to working with yours. What Alan didn't say was that he knew the real purpose of this exercise. The Confederation wanted to observe human military capabilities firsthand. Their fears about Earth being a Class 13 death world had only grown as they learned more about human history and warfare. The exercise began smoothly. The human crew worked well, maneuvering the Endeavour through the asteroid field with precision. Alan noticed that the Confederation ships maintained much larger safety margins around asteroids than his crew considered necessary. Captain, I'm detecting unusual movement from one of the Confederation ships, reported Ensign Kyle Rodriguez from the sensor station. Alan watched as one of the alien vessels suddenly powered down its engines. Hail them, he ordered. The communications officer tried several times. No response, sir. They appear to be experiencing some kind of systems failure. Commander Zeltor is hailing us, Lieutenant Cho announced. The alien commander appeared on screen again, looking even more agitated. Captain Price, the stellar wind has suffered a critical power failure. Their life support systems are rapidly deteriorating. and the asteroid field is interfering with our tractor beams. We must abort the exercise and request assistance from the nearest Confederation base. Alan checked the ship's position. Commander, we're 3 hours from the nearest base. Their life support won't last that long. It is unfortunate, Zeltor said, his voice flat. But the risk of trying to assist in these conditions is too great. We cannot risk additional ships and crews. Alan was shocked. We can help them. The Endeavor's shuttle can navigate close enough to dock with their ship. Impossible, Zeltor replied. The radiation from the asteroid field would be fatal to any rescue team long before they could reach the stellar wind. Alan turned to his science officer. Mr. Patel, what are the radiation levels? High, sir, Patel responded. Lethal to most Confederation species within 30 minutes of exposure. For humans, though, we could safely operate for up to 2 hours with our standard shielding. Alan made his decision instantly. We're going in. Prepare the shuttle. I'll lead the rescue team myself. Despite Commander Zeltor's protests, Alan and a team of 4 crew members boarded the shuttle and launched toward the disabled alien ship. The shuttle shook violently as they navigated through the densely packed asteroids. Radiation levels rising, reported Ensign Rodriguez, who was piloting the shuttle. Nothing we can't handle, but I'm betting the aliens on that ship are already suffering. They reached the stellar wind and found a way to dock despite the incompatible systems. When they cut through the airlock, they found 12 alien crew members in severe distress. Their skin was showing signs of radiation poisoning, and the ship's temperature had dropped to levels dangerous even to humans. We need to move quickly, Alan told his team. Their bodies can't handle these conditions much longer. The human team worked efficiently, moving the alien crew to their shuttle despite the difficult conditions. Alan carried 2 of the smaller aliens himself when they were too weak to move. By the time they returned to the Endeavor, all 5 humans were showing signs of radiation exposure and extreme fatigue, but they had saved every member of the alien crew. As the alien medical team took over caring for their injured comrades, Commander Zeltor approached Alan. Your team took severe physical risks, the commander said. Why would you do this? Alan, being treated for radiation burns on his hands, looked up at the alien commander. Because we could. Because they needed help. That's what humans do. You do not fear injury or death? Of course we do, Alan replied. But we fear failing to help others more. Word of the rescue spread quickly through the Confederation fleet. 2 days later, when the exercise resumed, Alan noticed a significant change in how the alien ships interacted with the Endeavor. There was still caution, but also a new respect. During the debriefing session, General Vrack of the Confederation, Security Council addressed the assembled officers. The actions of the human crew have given us much to consider, the general said. We have long classified Earth as a Class 13 death world, and humans as potentially dangerous due to their physical capabilities. What we did not anticipate was how these same capabilities would be used. The general's 4 eyes blinked slowly as he continued. In most galactic species, evolution in harsh environments produces aggression and self-preservation instincts. Humans appear to have developed a strong protective response instead. This is unexpected. After the debriefing, Alan was approached by Admiral Jones, Earth's military liaison to the Confederation. You've made quite an impression, Captain, the Admiral said. The Confederation is re-evaluating their entire approach to including humans in joint operations. For better or worse? Alan asked. Both, the Admiral replied with a small smile. They're terrified of what humans can physically endure, but they're starting to see the value in it. The Confederation has always struggled with rescue operations in extreme environments. Now they're considering creating special units with human personnel specifically for high-risk situations. We're going from galactic monsters to galactic rescue workers? Alan laughed. Something like that, the Admiral said. The Council is beginning to understand that a species that evolved on a death world doesn't just develop the ability to survive dangerous conditions, they develop the drive to help others survive them too. As Alan returned to the Endeavor, he looked out at the fleet of alien ships. Humans still had a long way to go to be fully accepted in the galactic community. Their reputation as creatures from a nightmare world wouldn't disappear overnight, but they had taken the first steps towards showing the galaxy that the same traits that made humans dangerous could also make them the greatest allies anyone could ask for. The real test would come when the galaxy faced a threat that required more than just peaceful cooperation. When that day came, Earth's status as a Class 13 Deathworld might just be the galaxy's greatest asset. Olivia Martinez adjusted her formal diplomatic attire as she prepared for another day of negotiations. 1 year after first contact, she had become Earth's lead diplomat to the Galactic Confederation. Today was critical. The Confederation Council would vote on Earth's membership status. "How are you feeling about today?" asked her assistant Paul as they walked through the massive hallways of the Confederation headquarters on Proxima Station. "Nervous," Olivia admitted. "Half the council still thinks we're too dangerous to allow free movement through Confederation space." They entered the waiting area outside the council chambers. Representatives from 27 different species filled the room, many moving away as the humans entered. Despite a year of diplomatic efforts, many species still felt instinctive fear around humans. "Ambassador Martinez," called a familiar voice. Olivia turned to see Catal, the Thraxi representative who had been one of Earth's strongest supporters. "Good to see you, Catal," Olivia said with a smile. "Any insight on how the vote might go?" The four-armed alien made a gesture Olivia had learned indicated concern. "The council remains divided. The security faction, led by the Vorax Imperium, continues to push for limited human movement and strict monitoring. They cite your species' physical capabilities and your planet's classification as reasons for caution." Olivia nodded. Earth's class. 13 Deathworld status remained a source of both fascination and fear throughout the galaxy. Humans were still viewed as biological anomalies, creatures who could survive conditions that would kill most sentient species. "And our supporters?" Olivia asked. "Those who have worked directly with humans, like the Thraxi and the Lentari, will vote in favor of full membership," Catal replied. "The rescue operation in the asteroid field 3 months ago helped your case considerably." The council session began an hour later. Olivia sat at the Earth delegation's table facing the semicircle of alien representatives. High Counselor Zex, a tall, crystalline being from one of the oldest Confederation species, called the session to order. "We continue our deliberations on the petition of Earth for full membership in the Galactic Confederation," Zex announced. "Before we proceed to a vote, Ambassador Drac of the Vorax Imperium has requested to speak." A massive gray-skinned alien with ridges along its skull rose from his seat. Ambassador Drac's people were from a heavy-gravity world, making them one of the few species physically comparable to humans. "Esteemed colleagues," Drac began, "I must once again urge caution regarding Earth's petition. We cannot ignore the biological reality. Humans evolved on the only known Class 13 Deathworld to produce sentient life. Their physical capabilities exceed safety parameters established by the Confederation's founding charter." Drac activated a holographic display showing comparative biological data. "Humans can survive radiation levels that would kill most species. They can function in gravity ranges that would crush many of us. They can endure temperature extremes, survive significant physical trauma, and operate without rest for periods that would kill most sentient beings." Olivia watched as the council members shifted uncomfortably, especially those from the more physically fragile species. "Furthermore," Drac continued, "Earth's history is filled with warfare and conflict. Can we truly risk allowing such a species unrestricted access to Confederation space? I propose instead a limited membership, human ships restricted to designated routes, human personnel subject to enhanced monitoring and limited technology sharing." When Drac finished, Catal rose to speak for Earth's side. The Thraxi ambassador spoke about the rescue operations humans had participated in, their willingness to help other species, and their rapid adaptation to Confederation protocols. As the EEMA debate continued, Olivia noticed unusual activity among the security personnel at the chamber's entrance. They seemed agitated, communicating urgently through their devices. Something was wrong. Suddenly, the chamber's main doors sealed shut with a heavy thud. Emergency lights began flashing, and the air took on a strange, sweet smell. "Security breach," announced a computerized voice. "Atmospheric contamination detected. Emergency protocols engaged." Panic erupted in the chamber as delegates realized they were trapped. Olivia's training kicked in immediately. "Paul, emergency breathers," she said calmly, pulling small devices from her diplomatic pouch. Earth's security team had insisted they carry them after intelligence suggested a radical faction might attempt to disrupt the proceedings. As delegates began showing signs of distress from the contaminated air, Olivia realized the attack's purpose. The gas wasn't lethal but would incapacitate most species long enough for the perpetrators to achieve their goal, stopping the vote on Earth's membership. "Catal," Olivia called, moving quickly to the Thraxi delegate who was already showing signs of respiratory distress. She handed him one of the breathers. "Help me distribute these to the council leaders." While Paul helped other delegates, Olivia made her way to the environmental control panel. The gas was coming through the ventilation system, but the controls were locked. Ambassador Martinez called High Counselor Zex, who was still functioning, despite the gas. "The system can only be reset from the maintenance shaft," the crystalline being pointed to a small access panel near the floor. Olivia examined the panel. It led to a narrow shaft that most larger Confederation species couldn't navigate. She pulled it open and peered inside. The shaft was hot. The attackers had also disabled the cooling systems. "The temperature in there is approaching 50 degrees Celsius, warned one of the security officers, checking readings on his device. "No Confederation species can survive that long enough to reach the control node." "I can," Olivia said simply. Earth's environment had prepared humans to endure conditions that would kill most alien species. Despite protests about the danger, Olivia entered the narrow shaft, crawling through the increasingly hot passage. The metal burned her hands, but she continued forward. After what felt like an eternity in the sweltering heat, she reached the environmental control node. The system had been sabotaged, but not destroyed. Using the emergency protocols Catal had taught her, Olivia reset the system and activated the emergency purge. Cool, clean air began flowing through the chamber. When Olivia emerged from the shaft, medics were treating affected delegates. Security had identified the culprits, a radical faction of isolationists who believed any contact with Deathworld species threatened the Confederation. As order was restored, High Counselor Zex called for attention. "Today's events have demonstrated precisely what we have been debating," the ancient being said, voice resonating through the chamber. "Under conditions that would incapacitate most Confederation species, Ambassador Martinez acted to protect this council, without regard for personal safety." The counselor turned to face Olivia. "The very adaptations that make humans concerning to some are the same traits that may make them valuable allies." When the vote finally came, Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Confederation, with only 3 species voting against it. Later, at the formal reception celebrating Earth's new status, Ambassador Drac approached Olivia. "Your actions today were illuminating," the Vorax diplomat admitted. "Though I still have concerns, I begin to see why Catal argues so passionately for human inclusion." Olivia nodded. "The same traits that let us survive on a death world also drive us to help others survive. That's what humanity has always done, turned challenges into opportunities." As she looked around at the gathering of diverse species, Olivia realized that Earth's journey into the galactic community was just beginning. Their reputation as Deathworld inhabitants would follow them, inspiring both fear and respect. But today had shown that being different wasn't necessarily a disadvantage. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers that even the Confederation feared. Perhaps what the galaxy needed most was a species tough enough to face those dangers, a species forged in the harsh conditions of a Class 13 death world called Earth. Commander Frank Johnson stood on the bridge of the Horizon, the first mixed-species exploration vessel under human command. 5 years had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Confederation. In that time, humans had carved out a unique role in galactic society. "Status report," Frank called to his crew. a mix of 6 different species working together smoothly after months in deep space. All systems normal, Commander, reported Lieutenant Zara, a Thraxi navigator whose multiple arms worked efficiently across several control panels. Long-range sensors are picking up unusual energy readings from the Maxis system, added Science. Officer Rel, a tall, slender alien whose species had evolved on a low-gravity world. Frank studied the data on his screen. The Horizon had been mapping this unexplored sector for 3 weeks. The Maxis system wasn't on their original survey route, but the energy signature was unlike anything in Confederation records. Set course for Maxis, Frank ordered. Let's check it out. As the ship changed direction, Frank noticed his non-human crew members exchanging glances. After 5 years working with various species, he had learned to read their body language fairly well. "Something on your minds?" he asked. Rel hesitated before speaking. "Commander, the Maxis system contains several planets with extreme environmental conditions. The source of these energy readings appears to be on Maxis 3rd, which has gravity 1.5 times Earth standard and significant volcanic activity." Frank nodded. He understood their concern. Even after years of cooperation, most Confederation species remained cautious about environments humans considered merely challenging rather than deadly. Earth's classification as a Class 13 Deathworld still influenced how aliens viewed human capabilities. "We'll take appropriate precautions," Frank assured them. "No unnecessary risks." 3 days later, the Horizon entered orbit around Maxis III. The planet below was a swirling mass of orange clouds hiding a surface marked by active volcanoes and vast rocky plains. "Energy signature confirmed," reported Ensign Chen, the human sensor operator. "It's artificial in nature, consistent with a distress beacon." Frank straightened in his chair. "A distress signal? Are there any registered vessels in this sector?" "Communications." Officer Cree, a blue-skinned Lentari, checked her console. "Yes, Commander. The Confederation research vessel Stellar Explorer was conducting geological surveys in this region. They haven't reported in for 2 standard weeks." Frank immediately ordered a full scan of the planet. The results were concerning. The Stellar Explorer had crashed near an active volcanic region. The ship's emergency systems were failing and life support was critical. "We need to mount a rescue operation," Frank announced. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Nyla, a reptilian Varex, looked concerned. "Commander, my scans indicate the crash site is experiencing severe environmental hazards. The temperature is approaching 60 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric toxicity is high and seismic activity suggests an imminent eruption." "How many survivors?" Frank asked. "Scanners show 12 life signs, but they're fading," Dr. Nyla replied. Frank made his decision quickly. "Prepare the landing shuttle. I'll lead the rescue team." "Commander," interrupted First Officer Zal, a crystalline being from one of the oldest Confederation species. "Those conditions exceed safety parameters for most of the crew. Even with protective gear, only humans could possibly function in that environment." Frank nodded. "I'm aware, Zal. That's why the rescue team will consist of the human personnel. Only myself, Ensign Chen, Lieutenant Rodriguez, and Dr. Ward." Within 30 minutes, the human rescue team was preparing to depart. They wore the most advanced environmental suits the Confederation had developed, though even these would only provide limited protection in the extreme conditions below. As Frank prepared to board the shuttle, Zal approached him. "I still believe this is an excessive risk," the first officer said. "But I understand why you must try." Frank smiled slightly. 5 years ago, the galaxy feared humans because we evolved on a death world. Now they call on us exactly because of that. The descent to Maxis 3rd was rough. Violent wind currents buffeted the shuttle, and visibility was near zero through the thick orange atmosphere. When they finally landed a kilometer from the crash site, the team immediately felt the hostile environment even through their protective suits. "Temperature outside is 63 degrees Celsius and rising," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez as they exited the shuttle. "We have approximately 2 hours before our suits can no longer compensate." The ground shook beneath their feet as they made their way toward the downed research vessel. In the distance, a volcano spewed ash and lava into the sky. When they reached the Stellar Explorer, they found it partially buried under volcanic rock. The ship's hull was severely damaged, and emergency power was failing. Life support is almost gone, Dr. Ward said, checking her scanner. The crew is in hibernation pods, but those will fail soon without power. Working quickly in the brutal heat, the rescue team cut through the damaged hull and located the hibernation chamber. The 12 alien researchers were unconscious in their pods, their life signs weak but stable. We can't wait for them to wake up naturally, Frank decided. We'll have to move them while they're still in hibernation. For the next hour, the human team worked tirelessly, transferring the hibernation pods to their shuttle despite the increasingly dangerous conditions. The ground trembled constantly, and toxic gases seeped through tiny leaks in their suits. By the time they loaded the last pod, all 4 humans were showing signs of heat stress and exhaustion. As they prepared for liftoff, a massive earthquake struck. A fissure opened just meters from their shuttle, spewing superheated gas and debris. "We need to go now," shouted Rodriguez from the pilot's seat. The shuttle lifted off just as a larger eruption began, narrowly escaping the pyroclastic flow that engulfed their landing site. Despite damage to the outer hull, Rodriguez navigated them safely back to the horizon. When Frank and his team emerged from decontamination, they found the entire crew waiting for them. To his surprise, the alien crew members formed 2 lines, creating a path from the airlock to the bridge, a Confederation honor tradition usually reserved for acts of exceptional service. In the medical bay, Dr. Nyla supervised as the rescued researchers were gradually brought out of hibernation. The leader of the research team, a Thraxi geologist named Professor Zinn, expressed amazement when told of their rescue. "You entered that environment willingly?" the professor asked Frank, his translator barely keeping up with his excited clicks and whistles. "Most species would consider those conditions unsurvivable," Frank shrugged. "Challenging but manageable for humans. It's what we're built for." Later, as the Horizon set course for the nearest Confederation outpost, First Officer E. Zal joined Frank in the observation lounge. "The Stellar Explorer's crew would have died without your intervention," Zal stated. "The Confederation Council will recognize your team's actions with commendations." Frank looked out at the stars. "When humans first contacted the Confederation, we were feared because we came from a Class 13 Deathworld. They thought that made us dangerous." "And now?" Zal asked. "Now they understand that surviving a Deathworld didn't just make us tough," Frank said. "It taught us to help others survive too. The very traits that once frightened the galaxy have become our greatest contribution to it." As the Horizon jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying its mixed crew and the rescued researchers safely through the stars, Frank reflected on humanity's journey. They had gone from being feared outsiders to respected members of the galactic community. Earth's classification as a death world would never change, but the galaxy's perception of what that meant had transformed completely. The creatures from the nightmare world had become the galaxy's guardians, the ones who would go where others couldn't face what others feared, and bring hope to the darkest corners of space.